My name is Ekundayo Peter Mesagan. I'm from Ondo State, but born and brought up in Lagos State. And I had my bachelor's degree in economics from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. That was in 2008 with a first class. Then I came to Unilag in 2012, December 2012 precisely, to start my master's degree in economics. And I finished the program with, that was in 2013, convocated March 2014. I also had a distinction in my master's. Then in 2015, I started the journey of a doctorate degree in the same department of economics. And here I am today. To have the best Ph.D. thesis in humanities is, I can't even quantify the feelings, because when I started this journey, I never knew it was possible. When I was having my convocation, my MSc convocation, there was a guy that won Best PhD Thesis Award. While I was seated and they were celebrating the PhD guys, I felt challenged that this their clothes, I would like to wear it. I was more interested in their clothes than the awards. So I never knew that I would not only be putting on the clothes, the robe, but I will also be picking up a Best Thesis Award. The first time I was called by the Dean of School of Postgraduate Studies that I have won, I kept screaming. At least I was screaming for the next 2 hours. I was just jumping up and down everywhere. So the feeling is unquantifiable, and I'm so lucky to be given that award. I thank God for it. My thesis is, the title is Effects of Trade Flows and Institutions on Environmental Quality in Sub-Saharan Africa from 1996 to 2016. Now, what brought up the idea was from my MSc project. In my MSc thesis, I did something on the impact of human condition on, impact of oil production on human condition in Nigeria. As an environmental economist, because my area of economics is energy and environmental economics. So when I look at my results from those findings, I felt challenged that the condition, human condition, is suffering at the expense of the largesse, oil largesse that Nigeria is exploring. So I then discussed with my supervisor during PhD that I would like to continue with that. I want to blow it open. First, I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to go to Niger Delta and do something more tailored towards the Niger Delta needs. But I felt no. With a university like University of Lagos, we should do something that will be more applicable to the African region. Then I decided to look at the Sub-Saharan African region so that we can have a more robust and a more encompassing result at the end of the day. And not only that, so that it can be appealing to agencies like the World Bank and African Economic Research Consortium, so that I can receive some things and then become a scholar on their program. And that was why I changed my focus and I decided to blow it open. And today I want to thank God that I also got those grants. I got the grant from African Economic Research Consortium, who funded my doctorate thesis. And the main thing in the work is that we are looking at the current global issue is among top nations in the world is the issue of global warming. Global warming. Everybody is talking about global warming. The international leaders have been meeting at several forums to discuss this. I think the first one took place at Katowice, Greece, where the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change met, and it comprises all leaders of the world. And they look at what can we do to reduce the negative impact of global emission and then bring down climate change. And then a protocol was developed, which is a global treaty that gave an insight, that gave a kind of a documentation to that agreement. That was the Kyoto Protocol. In the Kyoto Protocol, what shaped my orientation and made me focus on this region is that in the Kyoto Protocol, they divided countries into two. We have the Annex 1 nations, we have the Annex 2 nations. The Annex 1 nations are the developed countries with massive global emission, while the Annex 2 nations are developing countries, among which is Sub-Saharan Africa. Then, what challenged me is that the target of Kyoto Protocol is to lower global emission by 2 degrees Celsius and a further 1.5 degrees Celsius going forward. But the problem is that Annex 1 nations were given specific emission targets, America and the likes. But developing nations in Annex 2 were not given any target. They were only told that you could join us because since your volume of degradation is low, you could just have some level of country-specific country-specific targets that you want to do. We are not going to give you that. But I question that. In fact, I've done 3 other studies have come out from that, where I did one on SANEM and called for the fact that we cannot leave the developing nations, because why the major challenge affecting the global economy is carbon emission and all that. These developing nations are also having their own specific environmental degradation that are affecting them. Because of urbanization growth, the pace of urban growth, we are having sewage everywhere, deaths everywhere, and things like that. We are having forest depletion. In fact, the Sub-Saharan African region has the highest rate of forest depletion globally. So because of this, I said no, I'm going to look at what these nations have been suffering. What is the effect of trade on their own environment, and then see what we can come up with that can give credence to the fact that developing nations should not be excluded. Going forward, UNFCCC must find a way to bring them in and give them their targets. And so in that study, I look at the major issue we are having in Sub-Saharan Africa is in the area of trade, because we don't produce. We don't really have massive industry compared to the rest of the world. So I pick it from the angle of trade, that as trade is flowing in, according to the pollution haven hypothesis, people like Bomol and Oath 1988 and the likes, they said, yes, that as trade is flowing in, that trade always flowing to nations with weak regulations. That when a nation has a very weak environmental regulation, trade will be going to that region. Then I wanted to test it in my study. So I began to look at trade flows. But in this case, we look at trade flow in terms of investment, in terms of goods and services, in terms of production and consumption activities. That was what I looked at. Then I now move to the angle of the environment. Instead of the carbon emission that has been the major culpable factor globally, I decided to look at those environmental degradation indicators that are specific to the Sub-Saharan African region, which is forest depletion. We have the highest globally now since year 2000. Since year 2000, Sub-Saharan Africa has overtaken East Asia as the safe haven for the shipment of e-waste globally, electronic waste, all these substandard electronic products, TV and things like that. All these things have their own environmental implications. So I also look at the e-waste, I look at the forest depletion, I brought in carbon emission also, we can't leave it out, and I also brought in natural resource depletion. Because as we deplete our natural resources, all these birds and living things in those areas are dying. These are also not safe for us. So those are the 4 indicators which I completed an index from to capture environmental degradation for Sub-Saharan Africa. Then I now brought in institutions to look at our institutional framework, because since pollution haven hypothesis suggested that when regulations are weak, trade will flow to those regions. Highly polluting industries from developed nations will move to that region to circumvent the strict environmental regulations in developed nations. So I decided to bring it down. And then in terms of institution, I look at our control of corruption, look at our government effectiveness, and look at our regulatory quality. Those are the indicators. And in summary, so that I will not take our time, is that I find out that truly sub-Saharan African region has been totally, our environment is in shambles. And we find out that trade flows is not a major problem. Trade in goods and services is not a major problem. Our major problem is our consumption activities, as well as our production activities. Consumption has a lesser impact compared to production. Also, it is our trade in goods and services that have the problem and not the inflow of investment. Those were the summary we derived. And then the institutional indicators that is very crucial, because I did a lot of, which are more technical, I did a lot of mediating, interacting of those variables. And I found out that control of corruption is the most crucial indicator that sub-Saharan Africa can use to reverse the adverse impact of production on our environment. So which means going forward, all you just need to do, while government effectiveness and regulatory quality are also very good, but they are not as significant as control of corruption. So if we can control our corruption, first, control our corruption in a way, for instance, when these goods are coming into the country, we make sure that the environmental regulation experts that are at the ports are not collecting bribes. If you can take care of those angles, then it's going to send waves across the world that these people are ready, and then we can be able to control our environment better. I think these are some of the summary we drew from that. And one other implication from that study is that sub-Saharan Africa need to develop a very solid, robust framework so that our diplomats, when they are going to trade, when going for trade agreements, can have a template to work on, rather than going there to act on instinct and then just come up with any agreement that might not be favorable to the region. I won't say environmental challenges, it's financial challenge. There are a lot of challenges that an average PhD student normally encounter. One of them is the issue of finance, because PhD is very, very involving financially. It requires huge funds. When I started, I thought I would get my grant on time. The grant never came. I also tried to apply for the School of Postgraduate Studies grant. I couldn't get it. So I continued, and along the line, my supervisor was really very helpful to integrate me into some other things. They got some World Bank contracts, which he also brought me. We executed, I got some money and a lot of things. That also helped me to overcome those challenges. But the basic things were financial challenges as well as institutional challenges, because for a PhD student, especially a PhD student that is running it on a full-time scale, problem of accommodation was very key, because experience has shown that students running doctorate program and coming from home don't finish on time. They don't finish on time. I can be, we can have a few exceptions, but most times they don't finish on time. But staying on campus, recently it has become an issue between the PhD students and maybe the Dean of Students Affairs and things like that. So we really had a lot of issues during that period. Just go out of the hostel, don't stay in the hostel, do this and this. But at the end of the day, we scaled through, and then okay, the motivating factor in my academic journey has been the determination to be among the best. Because I always say that education is the opium of the masses. That the only thing that can help a poor man to break the yoke of poverty is education. So right from childhood, I've always seen education as a very important thing that I need to pursue with every strength in me, and that has been my motivating factor. And I want to, my number one motivator is God Almighty, who always give me the right path to follow. So I think that's my motivating factor to do well and to continue to pursue a very good stand in academics. I'm going to dedicate it to one major person, which is God Almighty, because it's been God all the way. I lost my father at a very tender age, I think when I was five, and I'm the firstborn. So growing up without a father and all that, that's one of the things that every little thing I run to God. It's been God, God, and God. So I dedicate it to God Almighty. And then secondly, I want to appreciate my family, dedicate it to the memory of my late father, and then my family members. My experience about University of Lagos is huge. There's positive, there's negative, you know, but the negatives are very minute, very minute, because University of Lagos is actually the nation's pride. It's the school of first choice. And I was saying it yesterday to somebody in the office. I said I thank God I went to University of Lagos, because University of Lagos is the Harvard of Nigeria. And I wish we can get there, because that should be the task of our leaders in the university, because we have what it takes because of our location and everything, and the human resources at our disposal in University of Lagos. So I think coming to University of Lagos is huge, and it's been fun. University of Lagos is a place of fun. You enjoy life, you know, you mix it up. While you are studying, there's also opportunity to interact, to meet people, for instance, when I was doing my master's, I started my own company, which is MGIG Global Services. It's a research firm. Then I started as a study abroad consulting firm. I started from class. I was a class rep, and because of the kind of class we had, one of my colleagues was the former assistant general manager in Fidelity Bank. And because of the way I was coordinating the class, we became close, and he sponsored everything. He paid for my office for 2 years rent, and a lot of other things. And from that time, I've kicked on till date. So I think coming to University of Lagos has been a blessing to me. Since the first day I stepped my foot on the University of Lagos, that was December 2012, my life has never remained the same again. So I want to thank God for University of Lagos. I can say my level of social is 20%. I'm not an introvert. I'm not a total extrovert too. I'm in between. But I think until midway into my PhD, I've never clubbed. I think I only went to club on 1 or 2 occasions. So I'm not a friend had to force me. I said, Mr. Man, it's not only book. I think we were there on 1 or 2 occasions. But basically, it's about 20%. But when you talk about football, I'm an Arsenal fan, so I watch football. Weekends, we are there, you know, we rock things. And then, generally, I interact very well with people, with people that are socials. I go out, I have fun. In fact, at some point, during my PhD especially, not master, during my PhD, every weekend, I have about 3 friends and I making 4. We will carry our cars and we'll be somewhere in a restaurant every week, every evening. Every evening we are just cooling off. We just relax, take some things every day. So I can say 20%. But the effect of socials on academics is that if social is too much, it will definitely kill the academics part, because both of them are enemies somehow. But one must live a balanced life, because especially for academia or somebody that wants to mentor others, if you are not a balanced individual, you might not be able to reason with people from different angles. If you are a purely academic person and somebody with social is behaving in a way, for instance, I do tell students, I say, I know you went to club, Abi, you did this, Abi, because I have an experience. If I'm not experienced there, I won't be able to counsel people generally. So I believe it's good to live a balanced life, but I want the academic to be more, if you are like my own type of person. Actually, I was never distracted because I'm a very smart guy, very, very smart. I always tell people that I've never read overnight in my life. I've never done it because I plan my time very well. Even from undergraduate, I do most of my studies during the day. I'm always in the library. Even during my masters, I'm always, so at night I can play, I can have fun. So personally, to me, there are no distractions because you cannot distract me except I allow you to distract me. But on the program, what I can call distraction is to others, the social is a distraction. To me, because social is like 20%, it's not a distraction. But generally, to students generally in Unilag, my friends, one distraction to PhD people, PhD students is marriage. That's a big distraction. It's good to be married and it's fine. But I noticed that most of my colleagues that are married before they started the program, it affected them seriously. I'm the only one convocating in my department, and I started with the journey with about 30 people, you know. So I know it affected them. There's one of my best friends that will convocate next year. It's rounding up. It also affected him. At some point, he had to go and marry. So that is one distraction to PhD people because it's research. And if you want to get to the peak in research, you need to concentrate fully. And if your partner is there, your wife she needs your attention, or your husband needs your attention, it's a big issue. So generally, it's a distraction. I have a PhD mentee now that's running her PhD somewhere. She called me some time ago and was telling me that she switched off her phone for 3 days. She didn't talk to her husband. This is a person that her first child is already a graduate. She said, on my research, I don't want to talk to my husband. He was afraid that something bad has happened. So those are the distractions for a PhD student generally. My advice to students generally is that they should be serious and they should be focused on their studies because it is only the best that will be celebrated. So I encourage everyone to be the best. But for PhD students, PhD candidates that are still on the program, I want to encourage them to take their research very serious because research is money making. There is life in it. Apart from their PhD thesis, there are a lot of things that they can get from doing a good study, and I wish them all the best. My name is Ekundayo Peter Mesagan. I am a proud product of University of Lagos, the university of first choice and the nation's pride. There are only 2 universities in Nigeria. It is the University of Lagos and the rest.